In early September, as the cool autumn breeze swept through the suburban neighborhoods of Chicago, Jennifer Harrison lay in her hospital bed, cradling her newborn daughter. Sophia was her firstborn, delivered by emergency cesarean section 4 nights ago. Though she arrived 2 weeks early, she was a healthy baby girl, and the obstetrician had given her a clean bill of health, saying, "She's recovering beautifully." For Jennifer, this tiny life was the greatest gift of her 4-year marriage. Known at her job as a claims adjuster at a major insurance company for her strong sense of responsibility and meticulous nature, she would occasionally soften when it came to children, something her colleagues had noticed. The 2 years of fertility treatments had been difficult, but she'd managed to get through them with David's constant support. David worked as a project manager at an architectural design firm. He was gentle and responsible, often earning him the envy of Jennifer's friends who called him the ideal husband. Tall and soft-spoken, he seemed to have become even more caring since Jennifer's pregnancy. During her worst morning sickness, he would leave herbal tea by her pillow every morning before heading to work. Their 15-year-old 2-story home had 4 bedrooms and a spacious living room, a fitting residence for a middle-class family. They had chosen this house together, dreaming of the day when children's laughter would fill its rooms. One of the upstairs rooms was already prepared as a nursery, decorated with cream-colored wallpaper and pastel furniture. In the crib that David had assembled sat a small teddy bear that Jennifer had chosen. However, David had been acting a bit differently lately. He claimed work had gotten busier and was coming home late more often. He frequently said he had emergency meetings or appointments on weekends and would go out. Since Jennifer wasn't feeling well in her 3rd trimester, she hadn't paid much attention to it. She understood that the architecture industry was competitive, and it was natural for David to be busy with the big project he'd been assigned. Labor began at 2 in the morning. Though she still had 2 weeks until her due date, the pain was definitely getting stronger. When she tried to wake David, his side of the bed was empty. There was a note on his pillow that read, "Emergency site inspection, won't be back until dawn. Call my cell if anything happens." Jennifer called a taxi by herself and headed to the hospital. After arriving at the hospital, she tried calling David repeatedly, but couldn't reach him. The doctor told her, "We need to perform a cesarean immediately," and Jennifer was wheeled into the operating room. David rushed to the hospital 3 hours after Sophia had taken her first breath. His face was pale as he apologized repeatedly, explaining that there was an accident at the site and my phone died. Still, when David held his daughter for the first time, his expression was gentler than she'd ever seen. "Thank you, Jenny. You're going to be a wonderful mother," he said with tears in his eyes. The small worry that had been growing in Jennifer's heart disappeared in that moment. During the 4 days in the hospital, David visited every day. Seeing him come during breaks from work made Jennifer feel her love for her husband all over again. The other patients in her room all said, "What a lovely husband you have." Even the nurses commented, "The father's joy is so touching to see." On the morning of discharge, as Jennifer fixed her hair in front of the mirror, her heart swelled with anticipation for the new life that was about to begin. Life as a family of 3. The happiness she had dreamed of was finally becoming reality. Holding little Sophia in her arms, she imagined peaceful days with her husband and daughter. The morning of discharge was overcast. It was chilly for early September in Chicago, so Jennifer put on a light cardigan and held Sophia close to her chest. A hospital nurse pushed her wheelchair and accompanied her to the lobby, but even though it was the appointed time, David was nowhere to be seen. "Your husband seems to be running late," the nurse said with concern. Jennifer checked her cell phone. 10:30 in the morning. They had arranged for pickup at 10 o'clock. There was no message from David, and when she called, it only went to voicemail. He must be tied up with work. "Could you call a taxi for me?" When the yellow taxi stopped at the hospital entrance, the driver kindly checked the baby seat. "Is this your first child?" the driver asked Jennifer in the back seat. "Yes, a little girl. We named her Sophia," Jennifer replied with a tired but smiling face. "Congratulations. I have grandchildren too. Newborn babies really are like angels." The taxi drove through the quiet residential neighborhood toward home. Jennifer gazed out the window, thinking about the new life that was about to begin. David was surely waiting at home. Maybe he was doing a final check of the nursery. Or perhaps he had gone out to buy welcome flowers. However, when they approached her street, an ominous feeling shot through Jennifer's heart. The atmosphere was clearly different from usual. Several patrol cars were parked on the road, and uniformed police officers were moving about. An ambulance was also standing by. Neighbors had formed small groups, staring at something. Jennifer's blood drained from her face. The patrol cars were parked right in front of her house. Yellow tape was stretched across the area, and police officers were stopping passers-by. Unknown people had gathered in her front yard, pointing and discussing something. "Please stop here," Jennifer said in a trembling voice. As she got out of the taxi, a police officer approached. He had a calm expression, but his eyes held the tension of someone trying to convey something serious. "I'm sorry, but you can't go inside right now." Jennifer readjusted Sophia in her arms. "Why not? What happened?" The officer hesitated for a moment, then answered quietly. "There was a break-in by an intruder, and we're currently investigating." "Is my husband safe?" Jennifer's voice was shaking. "Your husband is at the station giving a statement. He's not injured," the officer said reassuringly. "However, we need you to wait until we finish examining the scene." At that moment, Sophia began crying from hunger. Her small cries echoed through the quiet residential area, and everyone's eyes turned to Jennifer at once. She was confused and anxious, her mind in turmoil. Why had her peaceful life of just 4 days ago come to this? "Jennifer?" She heard a familiar voice behind her. Turning around, she saw Mrs. Perez, her neighbor, approaching with a worried expression. She was a Mexican-American woman who had lived in the area for over 30 years. Since Jennifer had moved in, she had looked after her like a real mother. "The baby is crying. Come to my house. I'll make you some warm tea," Mrs. Perez said kindly. The police officer agreed, saying, "That would be best. We'll let you know as soon as we learn anything." Mrs. Perez's house was 3 houses down from Jennifer's. The living room was decorated with a picture of the Virgin Mary and family photos, and it always smelled of flowers. Jennifer sat on the sofa and began nursing Sophia. "What on earth happened?" Mrs. Perez asked while brewing herbal tea. "I don't know. The police said there was a break-in," Jennifer answered, holding back tears. Just then, the doorbell rang. A young female officer was standing there. "You're Mrs. Harrison, aren't you?" "I'm Officer Rodriguez. I have some questions I'd like to ask you." The female officer carefully took notes as she explained the situation. "Around 8 this morning, we received a call from your neighbors. They said they saw a young woman enter your house using a key." "Using a key?" Jennifer was surprised. "But only my husband and I have keys." After that, they heard sounds of things breaking inside, a woman screaming, and glass shattering. The caller contacted police, and when we arrived, the woman had already fled. Officer Rodriguez flipped through her notepad. As for the scene, the living room furniture was overturned and all the picture frames were destroyed. "Liar" was written on the wall in red paint. Jennifer gasped. "Meaning a liar, right?" And, the officer hesitated for a moment, the nursery upstairs was also ransacked. The crib was overturned, and, "This child has no place here," was written on the wall. Jennifer's grip tightened around Sophia. It was a threat against her newborn daughter. Who would do such a thing, and why? "Has your husband shown any unusual behavior lately? Contact with strangers, suspicious phone calls or emails?" Jennifer thought about it. David's recent late-night returns, emergency weekend meetings, how he'd started keeping his cell phone with him at all times. And that night when labor began, when he wasn't there. Come to think of it, Jennifer remembered, my husband's work suddenly got much busier recently. But since I was in my 3rd trimester, I didn't ask for details. Just then, her cell phone rang. It was David. "Jenny, are you all right? Are you and the baby safe?" His voice was shaking. We're fine. But what happened to the house? From the other end of the phone, David let out a deep sigh. I'm sorry. This is all my fault. I'm coming to explain now. I got permission from the police. After the call ended, Jennifer was overcome with anxiety and suspicion. What did her husband's fault mean? And why did her newborn daughter have to be targeted? Outside the window, police officers were still continuing their investigation. She couldn't accept the reality that her home had become a crime scene in just 4 days. Sophia had fallen asleep again, but Jennifer's heart was in turmoil. While waiting for her husband in Mrs. Perez's living room, Jennifer opened David's company website on her cell phone. Looking at the staff introduction page for Architect Solutions, one woman's photo caught her eye. Ashley Bennett, interior designer. She was a beautiful woman with long chestnut hair and large eyes. Her profile described her as an up-and-coming designer attracting attention. Looking at her project assignments, several high-end residential development projects that David managed as project manager were included. In photos from company events, Ashley and David appeared to be having intimate conversations. Officer Rodriguez returned around 1 in the afternoon. We've identified the intruder. A woman named Ashley Bennett. She appears to be your husband's colleague. Do you know her? Jennifer's heart began racing. It was the woman from the photo she'd just seen. I've seen her in company photos. But I've never met her personally. We're getting detailed information from your husband, the officer said carefully, but there may have been some kind of personal relationship between them. Mrs. Perez let out a small, "Oh my sigh." From her years of life experience, she understood the seriousness of the situation. Jennifer was thinking back over David's behavior in recent months. The increase in late-night returns had started around spring. He had explained that he was busy with a big project, but despite that, he rarely seemed tired. If anything, he had seemed somewhat restless. Emergency weekend meetings had also become more frequent. Especially on Sunday mornings, he would often get calls and go out saying, a client meeting came up. Since Jennifer wasn't feeling well during her pregnancy, she had grown accustomed to spending time alone. The credit card statements had also been bothering her. Payments at unfamiliar restaurants had become more noticeable. David had explained them as this business entertainment, but many were late at night on weekdays. There were payments at upscale French restaurants and wine bars several times a month. His handling of his cell phone had also changed. Previously, he would casually leave it on the table even during meals, but recently he kept it with him constantly, checking messages while hiding the screen. She had woken up to the ringtone several times during the night, but David would say it was emergency work calls, and take the calls in another room. We also spoke with the hospital receptionist, Officer Rodriguez continued. Ashley Bennett is apparently a college classmate of Sarah Johnson, the receptionist. Jennifer was surprised. Then? Yes. She likely knew your discharge date and time in advance. Sarah seems to have unconsciously shared that information with her friend. It was a planned crime. Ashley had targeted the time when Jennifer was at the hospital to break into her home. And she was trying to deliver maximum shock at the moment when the new mother returned home. A little after 2 in the afternoon, David finally arrived. Released from the police station, his face was completely haggard. Far from his usual neat appearance, his shirt was wrinkled and his hair disheveled. When he entered Mrs. Perez's house, he knelt down in front of Jennifer and Sophia. Jenny, forgive me, David's voice was trembling. I'll tell you everything. I can't lie anymore. Jennifer looked down at her husband while holding Sophia. What happened, David? Why was that woman in our house? David took a deep breath. 1.5 years ago, Ashley and I were assigned to work on a project together. She was talented and enthusiastic, and at first I only saw her as a work partner. Mrs. Perez said, I'll go make another pot of tea, and quietly left the room. It was the kind of consideration befitting an older woman. But we had many meetings that went late into the night, and before I knew it, David's words faltered. By the time we found out about your pregnancy, I had already decided to end the relationship. But Ashley wouldn't accept it. Jennifer's chest tightened. While she was suffering from morning sickness during pregnancy, her husband was having a relationship with another woman. It was an unbelievable betrayal. 3 months ago, she told me she was pregnant. David couldn't lift his face. I told her I was completely ending the relationship. I said that nothing was more important than you and our unborn child. And then she. At first she cried and begged. But when she realized I wouldn't change my mind, she became furious. David covered his face with his hands. She sent me emails every day saying I'm carrying your child. She persistently tried to contact me at work, and my colleagues were starting to notice. There were silent phone calls too, weren't there? Jennifer said quietly. Many times in the middle of the night. David looked up in surprise. You noticed? I had a feeling. But I never imagined it would come to this. The night when labor began was also explained. Ashley had been waiting in ambush in front of David's apartment, got into his car saying, I want to talk one last time. She showed him a pregnancy diagnosis and demanded reconciliation, but David told her it's over. That's when the call came from Jennifer, but Ashley grabbed his cell phone and turned it off. She wouldn't get out of the car for 3 hours. When I tried to go to the hospital, she screamed, Are you abandoning my child? David continued in a shaking voice. By the time I finally convinced her to get out of the car, your surgery had already begun. Sophia was breathing softly in her sleep. That this innocent life was about to be caught up in the ugly conflict of adults was unbearable for Jennifer. Is Ashley's pregnancy real? David shook his head. The police investigation revealed that the doctor's diagnosis was forged. She wasn't pregnant. It was all a lie to try to keep me. Jennifer was speechless. In addition to the shock that her beloved husband had been having a relationship with another woman, there was the fact that this woman had even used a false pregnancy to try to manipulate him. And the reality that her newborn daughter had been the target of threats. Have the police found her? Not yet, Officer Rodriguez returned and answered. However, we have leads. We should be able to apprehend her soon. That evening, Ashley Bennett was apprehended at a motel in the city. When Officer Rodriguez called, Jennifer was nursing Sophia. We've arrested the suspect. We should be able to get a detailed statement tomorrow, the report said, and Jennifer breathed a sigh of relief. The next morning, Ashley's statement was revealed at the police station. Jennifer and David visited the station after leaving Sophia with Mrs. Perez. In the calm conference room of the detective division, Detective Sergeant Henderson explained the full scope of the incident. Ashley Bennett had approached David with a plan from the very beginning, Detective Sergeant Henderson said while spreading out documents. According to her statement, when she was assigned to the project team a year and a half ago, she already had strong feelings for David. Ashley had joined the company as a talented designer, but one of her motivations was David's presence. She had heard his reputation from senior colleagues as an excellent and honest project manager and had intentionally requested assignment to his projects. She knew from the beginning that David was married, the sergeant continued. However, she had also researched that his wife was undergoing fertility treatment, and she convinced herself that their marriage must not be going well. Using late-night meetings as an excuse, Ashley gradually approached David. Starting with work consultations, she eventually began confiding personal troubles. She tried to gain David's sympathy with stories about not being understood by family and anxiety about the future. The relationship began last spring when they were under pressure from a major project deadline. To David, who was exhausted from working overtime every day, Ashley devoted herself, saying, I'll support you. One night, at a celebration for the successful completion of the project, their relationship crossed the line. David apparently said from the beginning, I love my wife, and this was a mistake, the sergeant explained carefully. However, Ashley convinced herself that eventually he'll choose me. When Ashley learned of Jennifer's pregnancy, her jealousy turned to madness. Why can that woman have a child when I can't? She increasingly confronted David. When he announced the end of their relationship, Ashley lied about being pregnant. The fake diagnosis was created by asking a friend who worked in medical administration. She deceived her friend by saying, "I need documents for a friend," and obtained forged documents with a doctor's stamp. This friend had not been told Ashley's true purpose. 3 months ago, when David told her he was completely ending the relationship, her plan turned to revenge. The sergeant continued in a heavy tone. She stated, "I'll destroy that perfect family and I won't let that woman experience the happiness of motherhood." Ashley had planned meticulously. First, she obtained Jennifer's due date from her college friend who worked at the hospital reception. As the due date approached, she frequently contacted this friend to get information about hospitalization and discharge. As for the house key, she had stolen it from David's bag during a break at work and made a copy. David didn't notice it was missing, and Ashley casually returned the original key to his desk. "When she learned of your discharge date, she was waiting at the scene from early that morning," the sergeant continued his explanation. "She broke in at 8 in the morning and continued destructive acts for about 30 minutes. Ashley first targeted the family photos displayed in the living room. Wedding photos of Jennifer and David, photos from their trips together, photos from the pregnancy celebration party. She smashed them all on the floor and destroyed them. She also overturned sofas and chairs and wrote 'liar' in large letters on the wall with red paint. Most shocking was what she did in the upstairs nursery. She overturned the crib that David had assembled and tore apart the teddy bear that Jennifer had chosen. Then she scrawled messages on the wall like, 'This child has no place here,' and 'Liar's daughter.' She stated that, 'I wanted to see Jennifer's face of despair when she came home and saw the destroyed house,' the sergeant said with disgust in his voice. After the destructive acts, Ashley waited in a nearby park. When police arrived, she fled in panic, but was caught on security cameras. She then hid in a motel, but her location was identified through credit card usage records. When arrested, Ashley showed no signs of remorse. She continued to assert, "I only loved David, and that woman got in the way." A psychiatric evaluation diagnosed her with severe borderline personality disorder. She'll be charged with breaking and entering, property damage, and threatening behavior, the sergeant finally announced. Depending on the results of the psychiatric evaluation, she'll likely receive a suspended sentence. However, a restraining order will definitely be issued. When leaving the conference room, Jennifer was overwhelmed by complex emotions. While there was relief that the perpetrator had been caught, her distrust and anger toward her husband were also growing. David tried to stay close to her apologetically, but Jennifer kept her distance. "I'll be staying at Mrs. Perez's house tonight," Jennifer said quietly. "I need some time alone to think. Jenny, please. Don't say anything right now," Jennifer continued walking without looking back. Outside the police station, Jennifer looked up at the sky. Thin sunlight was filtering through the clouds. The case was solved, but the rebuilding of her life was just beginning. She had to protect Sophia and protect herself too. She already understood that this would require difficult decisions. 6 months later in spring, Jennifer was spending morning time with Sophia on the balcony of her new apartment. It was a small one-bedroom unit in a quiet residential area of Chicago, but she could see the green of a park from the window, and warm sunlight streamed in during the mornings. Sophia was growing healthily. Now 6 months old, she had become a baby who laughed often without being shy around strangers. When Jennifer talked to her, she would squeal with delight, warming her mother's heart every morning. "Good morning, Sophia. It's another beautiful day." 3 months had passed since returning to work. Her supervisor at the insurance company was understanding and allowed her to work shortened hours. Her colleagues welcomed her back warmly, and especially the women with child-rearing experience gave her lots of practical advice. Focusing on work also increased the time when she could forget painful memories. Ashley Bennett had received the expected suspended sentence. It was a 2-year suspended sentence conditional on psychiatric treatment, plus a restraining order prohibiting her from coming within 500 meters of Jennifer and Sophia. She was currently receiving treatment at a psychiatric hospital in another state, according to occasional updates from the police. Her relationship with David had completely ended. He had quit his job and moved to another state, trying to make a fresh start at a new workplace. The monthly child support was being deposited as promised, and visitation rights were granted once a month, but Jennifer had no intention of arranging such opportunities for the time being. "You might meet your daddy someday, but for now, let's do our best together, just mommy and you." When Sophia gripped Jennifer's finger with her tiny hand, she smiled. This little hand was giving her the strength to live. She went to counseling twice a month. In the beginning, tears wouldn't stop flowing from anger and sadness, but recently she had become able to look back at the past calmly. Dr. Lee, her counselor, praised her, "You're recovering remarkably quickly. You don't need to blame yourself. You did nothing wrong. What's important is what kind of life you're going to build with Sophia from now on." Encouraged by those words, Jennifer was gradually regaining her confidence. New friendships were also forming. The relationships with single mothers she met at the neighborhood child rearing support center were particularly reassuring. Exchanging information with women in similar circumstances and sometimes taking care of each other's children significantly reduced her sense of loneliness. Mrs. Perez remained like a grandmother figure. She would visit once a week with homemade food and dote on Sophia. Her presence, saying, "You two are my family," was the greatest emotional support of all. There was also talk of promotion at work. Her abilities as a claims adjuster were recognized, and she was recommended as a candidate to lead a new team. When the department manager said, "It's a position with responsibility, but also very rewarding. Please consider it," Jennifer accepted without hesitation. The path to financial independence was also becoming visible. With the new position, her income would increase, allowing her to provide Sophia with a better living environment. In the future, purchasing a small house wasn't just a dream. This weekend, she planned to hold a half-birthday party for Sophia. Mrs. Perez and friends from the Child Rearing Support Center would participate. It would be a modest celebration with a small cake and pink balloons to celebrate 6 months of life. "Everyone is so happy about your growth." Sophia smiled brightly, as if she understood her mother's words. Seeing that smile, Jennifer was certain. No matter how difficult the situation, she could stand up and move forward for someone she loved. Becoming a mother had given her a strength she never knew she possessed.